The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
The show just starting, and I'm already furious at Caleb. Caleb, I'm going to tell you why here momentarily, but you got me in trouble across the state, Caleb. How in the world? Oh, my goodness, I'm trying to do an appearance on another radio station. I'm asking about what? Oh, okay. We've got the breakout Vols for 2024 coming up. Welcome to the program. Please hit that like and subscribe button. That'll be today's tough question. The Vols wide receiver rotation, should it remain shortened or open it to more than 3 players? Also, James Pierce and Squirrel White named the top freaks in college football. I don't think James Pierce is any surprise. Some of you may be a little bit surprised to know Squirrel White is that freakish athletically, but he is. Pitbull is going to be the new name of a football stadium in Florida. Would Tennessee ever consider changing the name of the stadium? I have the one perfect name change that if you were going to do it, that this would be the one. However, I still would not change it, but we'll get to that. Ranking all 16 head coaches, and we've got a lot to get to. Please hit the like and subscribe button now. We greatly appreciate it. Our poll question, which is brought to you by our good friends at Asia Cafe, is on the YouTube page. Who will be the breakout ball this season? Okay, for some reason, there's a yes. And then there's Keenan Pili, Ricky Gibson, and Arian Carter. So I'll go back and reset that poll. But let me throw this at you, Caleb. I'm doing, I think it's WHBQ in Memphis. First question out of the box. Looking at your site, love it. Saw you ranking coaches, and man, it seems like you have Steve Sarkisian pretty low. They thought I wrote the story. We'll get to SEC ranking coaches. And I said, no, that was Caleb Calhoun.
Well, yeah, that's actually kind of hilarious. I grew up listening to Sports 56. When I was young, my dad had that was WHBQ. My dad listened to Sports 56 when we were on the radio. When I would ride in the car with him, I was very familiar with it. I don't know if anybody's there from when I listened to it back in the day because I grew up in Memphis. But yeah, that's kind of funny. Yeah, we will talk about Steve Sarkisian because I get to light into him today, and I love lighting into Steve Sarkisian.
Why do you love lighting into Steve Sarkisian so much? Why can't you be happy for him that he apparently has overcome his alcohol issues and is having a renaissance to his career?
Because I don't think it's a real renaissance. And I can break that down why.
Okay. We'll get into all that. And then who will be the Vols breakout player? You can vote on that on our YouTube poll right now. Go to the YouTube page. So the 4 that we want to discuss the most, Elijah Simmons, Arian Carter. And then who else did you want to put on our poll?
Elijah Simmons, Arian Carter. This you guys can tell me if you think this is cheating, but Keenan Pili. And
we're going to discuss that. I don't think that's cheating, and I don't want to put Nico on it because everybody's going to say Nico. So who else is 4th?
And then Ricky Gibson.
Ricky Gibson. All right, I think that's a good 4. So right now on the YouTube page, who will be the Vols breakout player? Elijah Simmons, Arian Carter, Keenan Pili, or Ricky Gibson? And that will lead us to today's tough question brought to you by Asia Cafe.
Today's tough question. Take a side.
Take a stand.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, you can check out Caleb's list online on offthehooksports.com as he ranks the SEC coaches. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through this list, and I'm going to tell you whether or not I agree or disagree. I'm going to keep a close eye on the message board too, because some of Caleb's rankings are let's say out of the ordinary, because Caleb is ahead of the curve a lot. So I don't want to say they're absolutely crazy, but out of the ordinary, I think is fair. So let's get rolling. I'll tell you if I agree. Brought to you by Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org, AsiaCafe.org, right below in Knoxville. You'll love it. Shane Beamer's 16. I got a problem already because I would have Billy Napier at the
Wait,
lower.
we're talking about breakout players. What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Breakup players. Excuse me. What am I talking about? I got the coaches there. All right. So let's turn that. As far as breakout players, you rank 10. Who you got number 10?
Yes, breakout players for Tennessee football. The top 10, my number 10 is Jeremiah Thielander. And I debated whether or not to put him higher, but I do think he's going to be the odd man out of the three linebackers. Him, Aaron Carter, Keenan Peely. We'll get to those, funny enough. But just because he'll be the third doesn't mean he's not going to play a lot. I mean, he played a good bit last year, and I think he'll play more this year.
Okay. If I play this,
that's crazy.
That means I disagree with you. If I play this, you're right on.
That's crazy.
I would have Jeremiah Thielander, that I was corrected by Tim Banks the other day. I would have Jeremiah Thielander rated in the top 5 of this list.
Okay, we'll debate that, but I do have to say that, he's not going to start. And
That's
the thing
true.
is, he did play. His role technically hasn't increased from last year because he was the third linebacker on the list last year after Keenan Peely went down. And so part of this breakout, the concept of breakout is how much of a leap do you take from the year before? My criteria for this list, you have to have been at Tennessee last year, and you can't yet have played a season where you started the majority of the games.
Okay. I guess then maybe I'm going along the most improved lines from what I've heard. And he is one of those. But you're right. His role is not going to change unless something happens to Keenan Peely, which nobody wants. Dominique Bailey.
Dominic Bailey's number 9. With Tyler Barron. Oh, you go ahead and give me your thoughts.
I agree with that.
So Dominic Bailey, with Tyler Barron gone, I think Tennessee is a little bit in flux with who's going to play the other end spot, the one who always has his hand on the ground, basically.
Yes.
And I believe, Tyler Barron was 6'5", 260, but I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Dave, I believe they prefer a 280, 290 type guy to play that role, don't they? More than a 260 guy.
On what would be considered the strong side most of the time, the opposite of the Leo position, yes.
Yes. Yeah, they want 280, 290. Dominic Bailey fits that role. The only question I have is, and here's the truth, Dominic Bailey was on the roster before Tyler Barron was there. He has just 13 total tackles from last year. That was his most productive year ever. Is there a red flag that he's a 5th-year senior and that's his most productive year?
Yes, which I would not have him on this list.
That's crazy.
Josh Turbeville, number 8.
I mean, Charles Campbell's gone. Tennessee needs a place kicker. Josh Turbeville will handle kickoff duties. He's the favorite to become the place kicker.
Hey now.
Kick him straight, young man. Ethan Davis at tight end. I considered writing a feature on him this morning, and I'll probably do it tomorrow. I feel like of the potential superstars, he's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. Maybe that's because he's younger, maybe because they actually have depth at tight end now. But I might even have Ethan Davis a little bit higher, but I'm good with about 7.
Yeah, think about this. Both starting tight ends from last year are gone, McCallum Castles and Jacob Warren. Ethan Davis was on the roster last year. He struck me as a couple of other people were going to name on this list who they were true freshmen last year that were highly touted and were supposed to sit a year and they'd be ready to break out this year. I mean, if he doesn't break out this year, he's a disappointment as a signed prospect. He's going to be he should win the go-to receiver job for Tennessee, be the go-to receiving tight end. There's no reason he shouldn't win that. He's way too athletic to not win it.
I'm with you. Tyree West, maybe a little high, but I think that he is going to take another major step last year as he was primarily a backup the year before.
Yeah, remember, guys, he was the most highly touted recruit on signing day of 2021, the early signing period for the 2022 class. We just talked about replacing Tyler Barron. Dominic Bailey is going to break out because he's going to move to the number 2 spot in the role. Tyree West, I think, is going to steal the starting spot in the role, though. He's going to be the starting strong side defensive end, I think, on opening day. And I don't know if you agree with me on that, Dave, but I think Tyree West the potential is too great for him.
Nope, I agree. But speaking of potential, there is Elijah Simmons, who you have at number 5 as the biggest breakout ball. If you told me right now, Caleb, that he's 100% healthy I would say he's number one. And it's not close. And I would argue with you till the end of time. But I don't
think I know you wouldn't, because there's a very obvious number one, guys. Okay. You wouldn't have Elijah Simmons over the number one.
Oh, well, Nico. I'm sorry. I'm taking Nico out of the equation because I know everybody's going to take Nico first.
You can't take the obvious number one out of the equation sometimes. We got to get to him. But
okay, no, I'm sorry. So I would have Elijah Simmons. I'm interested to see who's 2 and 3 and 4. But I would have Elijah Simmons at number close to, or let's say number 2 behind a guy named Nico. But I think the world of him. I hope things happen well for him this year, because it feels a little like the Billy Ratliff, doesn't it? Where a defensive guy just keeps getting these nicks and bangs and injuries. And then you go to the NFL and you go through it's the physical inspections and they look at you and you got all these nicks and bangs and it costs you hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. I hate to see that happen, and I hope it doesn't happen to Elijah Simmons. I hope he's 100% healthy. Number 4, you've got Ricky Gibson III, Jr. Esquire.
Ricky Gibson III, Ricky Gibson III may be the most productive, may one day become the most productive RG3 in NFL history. See what I did there?
I got you now.
Okay, so Ricky Gibson III, I thought it was going to be Jordan Matthews, but Ricky Gibson, for those who don't realize, only started one game last year in the Citrus Bowl, but we've heard a ton about him already. I think this is another one that they took Jordan Matthews and Ricky Gibson expecting one of them to break out and emerge. It was kind of a numbers game. They were playing the odds, and Gibson turned out to be that guy, and I think they're very high. I think he can be a lockdown corner this year.
You just made me think of something, not to get too off topic, but didn't Tennessee's 2024 season start in December of 2023? When you decide to play Ricky Gibson III as a starter, and you said that was his first starting game?
Yes.
Okay, and you decide to play Nico, and you don't even consider, because I was told early in the process, as soon as the final regular season game was over, that it was going to be Nico. That season started then. This season started then, and I think that's the way Josh Heupel looked at it. He was fortunate to play the perfect opponent in Iowa.
Well, yeah, but 2023 started in the 2023 Orange Bowl from the year before. I think
that. Yeah, I just think there was even a more decided, you play Joe Milton if you're concerned about the look and you want to make sure you win and he's your guy and all that. But it just feels like they made a clean break from the old to the past, from the former guys to their guys. Not across the board, but it just seems like if there was a decision to be made, they were going to lean towards the new guys. That's fair to say.
Yes, this is a larger topic, though, because this is what we talk.
Right.
This is a case for expanding the playoff or not having it at all. But when you have a 14 playoff, you make every other bowl game meaningless. So every other bowl game now, they're not going to try to win. Coaches are trying to prepare for the future. That's why I have actually always defended, Dave. I defend player opt-outs for bowl games. If you're not going to come back next year, I don't want you playing on my team in the bowl game because I want to get the other guys ready.
As long as it's not the playoffs, I agree. Arian Carter, number 3. Listen, I'm going to lean on Fred White, who tells me he is an incredible talent, and he was hurt last year. I think Arian Carter is going to have a fantastic year.
And for those who don't know, Fred White called James Pierce before anybody called James Pierce.
Yeah, Fred White said that James Pierce was like Leonard Little, and I've known Fred for a lot of years, and he didn't say that lightly.
Yeah, he didn't. So he told us that before anybody. Fred White scouts defensive players very, very well. And if he's saying that about Arian Carter, I'm with him. Arian Carter was the guy. We forget this. He was, for the 2023 recruiting class, Dave, he was the defensive version of Nico Iamaleava, which is, we know you're going to sit for a year behind a more veteran player who you will probably be better than long-term. But then you will start your sophomore year and you will break out and become a superstar. I think we have superstar expectations for Arian Carter. Now,
before at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, we were discussing Keenan Pili and where that might fall on the list. And you said that I might have a problem with it because, he is more a proven commodity than a lot of the other guys we've talked about. However, I don't. I think that given your criteria of the biggest step from one year to the next, I mean, his was because of injury, but other than Nico, who is number 1, I can't argue with Keenan Pili at all because barring injury, he's going to start every significant snap for the Vols at middle linebacker.
Yes, and technically this would be a breakout from last year, and he would break out for Tennessee. And for those who question, the reason I don't have Brew McCoy on this list, and Dave, you know this, Brew McCoy was too effective in 2022, so he wouldn't be a breakout player because Brew McCoy has already produced for Tennessee.
I agree. Brew was proven enough to me. Now, other than Nico, who is the one player on this list that doesn't just take a step this year that has the greatest potential for being a superstar? Let me ask you that question, brought to you by Work Trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle right now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is all about time. They save you time because you don't have to go back and forth to get tools or to the shop. And they've got the Knapheide work bodies. They're installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special like cranes and dump trucks in Birmingham, on Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks with an X, worktrucksllc.com. Why risk chancing your future in business on the wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? Work Trucks with an X, llc.com. Proud supporter of the Vols. Who do you think has the greatest upside out of the group of breakout players that we talked about? You got to pick one. Let me ask you this: if you're an agent and you had to pick one guy, and his name can't be Nico, and you had to sign one guy, who would it be? You're going to make 10% or 5% of his money.
There's two. And they were in the same class as Nico. And Nico and these two were all recruited for the exact same reason, which is to ride the bench as, like I said, as freshmen in 2023, while backing up guys who were much more experienced and then being ready to explode onto the scene as superstars in 2024. One is the guy we just mentioned, Arian Carter. I think Arian Carter is a potential All-American type player for Tennessee. It's one of the biggest early recruiting wins of Josh Heupel's tenure. He beat out. Remember how badly Nick Saban wanted him?
Yes, no, absolutely.
And Heupel won that battle. The other is Ethan Davis. I think a tight end like Ethan Davis is such a rare mismatch. So it's those three. I do got to be fair here, though. I can't just dismiss Nico, guys. We're like, other than Nico. Right. Let's give Nico Iamaleava some love. He is one on this list because he is going to break out, because he's going to go from not being a starter to, in my opinion, being a Heisman winner.
No, I don't know if he's Heisman winner, but he definitely could be at the ceremony, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was all SEC. As far as my three players, if I were to choose between these 10 that I wanted to be the agent of, it would be Arian Carter. I would cut a deal for Arian Carter to get Elijah Simmons in case he turns out to be healthy. And then my other one was actually Ethan Davis, because I think Ethan Davis is the type of NFL tight end that you want. He is incredibly athletic, and I don't know when it clicks for him, but we haven't talked enough about Ethan Davis. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. He is incredibly athletic. When it clicks, and it might be this year, it might be midway through the year, it might be next year. But when it clicks, because he hasn't played a lot of tight end, he is going to be really, really good. I'll remind you. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is he the most total package at tight end you've ever seen at Tennessee? People are going to say Jason Witten, and I love Jason Witten, and I think Witten has a case for the greatest complete tight end of all time in the NFL. But I'm talking about in athletic ability. Is he the greatest total package you ever saw on a tight end? Ethan Davis.
Dustin Moore. Do you remember that name?
That was 96, right? I don't remember that name.
Yeah, and he flamed out because he had off-field issues, but that was the best. He was Ethan Davis, but was like 275. I mean, he was ridiculously good. But other than that, yes, and people tell you that Dustin Moore is one of the most talented players at Tennessee in this era. I think Jason Witten is more athletic. Probably he doesn't get as much credit for being athletic because of the Caucasian issue, but I think
he's so big.
Yeah, and he's so big. You don't think of big white guys being fast, but he is.
Jason Witten, I've told you, he's the only typically a tight end in the NFL. You could either line them up at receiver or line them up at left tackle. Jason Witten's the only player in NFL history you could have lined up at either one.
Agreed. The show represented by Banks and Jones, breakout players for the Vols. We change gears into Tennessee's wide receiver rotation. Should it remain small, which is basically 3 players, another if you want to count a tight end, or should they open it up? The show represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb, you brought up the notion that Tennessee should lengthen their wide receiver rotation. So for those that don't know, don't pay close attention, Tennessee pretty much plays 3 wide receivers throughout a series and throughout a game. Now, throughout a series, it's so the other team can't sub. So I'm going to start with that. You're not suggesting subbing during drives, correct?
No, I'm not. I don't think Tennessee can sub during drives on offense with how they do it. I'm not suggesting that at all.
Right. That would completely throw off the tempo. So what you're suggesting is other guys in the rotation on different drives, correct?
Right. And
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just raising the question, not to gaslight, but I'm just asking questions, bro.
Yeah, I would say if it ain't broke, don't fix it at this point. And you and I have said before that we thought David Cutcliffe, when he came back to Tennessee, one of his major strong moves was the fact that he limited it to a small receiver rotation. I, in general, prefer small receiver rotations. As a matter of fact, I can't remember the last great team that I thought, wow, they go 5 receivers. I guess that Clemson team. You remember the Clemson team that had T. Higgins and had Amari Rodgers, and it seemed like they had 15 receivers. But other than that, can you remember a great team that had more than 2 or 3 good receivers?
No, I've always believed. Now, people say this about quarterbacks, and I'm not saying it's not true with quarterbacks, but I have always kind of believed that old saying where if you have 5 receivers, you don't have any receivers. And I mean, I kind of go through history and look at it, and most teams I've covered that were very, very, very successful, they had a clear go-to guy. They had I guess you would call them a complement on the other side. And then they would have a slot guy that, stretches the field. And I've never seen more than that. And I think that, just to give you an example, was one of the biggest things Nick Saban wanted when he hired Lane Kiffin. Remember, they were adjusting the offense and turning up the tempo. But he loved the way Lane Kiffin zoned in on a go-to receiver. And how many receivers, and since that time, from 2014, did you guys notice the rest of Nick Saban's career, Alabama never had more than one clear-cut go-to receiver over everybody else?
No, and some great ones had to sit and wait, not to the extent that the running backs did at Alabama. That sitting on the bench got to be an Alabama tradition for running backs. But do you think Tennessee has the receivers to demand more playing, more getting on the field? And we're not talking about the second half in garbage time when Gaston Moore's out there, okay? We're talking about real gameplay when the game is still in question.
Well, here's a recruiting factor I would ask these receivers if they want to demand more playing time. And this is the truth. Would you rather go somewhere you can play now and spend your whole career just splitting reps with 5 or 6 other guys and never having a chance to separate yourself? Or riding the bench here for a year or two, and then when you get on the field, you will get so many touches, you'll have better stats than anybody else in college football?
Well, when I say demand, I don't mean that they're going to go to the coach and say, by God, I got to play. I mean, do they have enough talent that it demands getting them on the field? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But no, I've never really been one who believes in that. I've never believed in like put it this way. You're a car guy. If you got a BMW and a Ferrari, the talent, the car collection doesn't demand that you
check the oil is the answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, the quality, the flashy car collection doesn't demand that you try to drive a different one every day. Sometimes you still maybe just drive the same BMW to work every day.
I drive the same Audi every single day. I think I'll differ with you a little bit. I think they had the depth to demand it, but I don't think Josh Heupel likes demands. And I don't think that he's going to do it just because he has a lot of wide receivers. So we think the starters are going to be who? You tell me that first, and then we'll go from there. I remind you, TriStar hats, for the latest in TriStar hats, all you have to do is go to tristarhatsco.com, tristarhatsco.com, and that's the original hats, apparel, and more. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off, HOOKED for 10% off. So I look at the starters, and well, let me ask you first, who do you think the starters will be?
So there are two clear-cut starters for me. One is Brew McCoy at wideout.
Sure.
And the other, and we're going to talk about him in a minute, is Squirrel White in the slot. The battle is for who's going to be the other wideout to complement Brew McCoy, to play the role that Ramel Keaton played in 2022. And actually, Ramel Keaton was forced to be the go-to receiver last year, but the role Ramel Keaton played in 2021 and 2022 when he complemented Cedric Tillman and then Brew McCoy. That's going to be the question.
I mean this with all due respect to Ramel Keaton. He wouldn't be able to make this team, and he wouldn't be able to make a team in 2 or 3 years. I'm looking at their roster. There are 5, 6 guys that are more talented than him. No offense, he did everything right, but if they're going to be more explosive than Ramel Keaton.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, you're not going to hear me debate you on that. But to play the role of Ramel Keaton, there are 3 guys that I think are in the fight for it. And they are Dante Thornton, Chris Brazel, and Mike Matthews. Now, Mike Matthews is the best of the 3. Chris Brazel is probably the one most prototypically designed to play that role, because you would consider him a hands guy, right, Dave? A hands receiver? Yes,
but an overall talent as well. My 3 would be McCoy, Brazel, White. Those would be
okay.
My
So you
3.
think Brazel? That's what I mean. You think Brazel's going to win that wideout role on the other side?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Over Dante Thornton.
Surprisingly, yes. I think Dante Thornton is going to end up being a bit of a utility wide receiver that could slide in the slot or play on the outside. I think in the end, he could be more valuable, even though we got so high on him and thought he was just going to be incredible. He could be more valuable as a utility player than he is explosive as an incredible athlete. I just think his role has changed in a year.
I'm not really going to debate you on that, but I don't know if that works. It's funny. You talked about going like 5 or 6 deep. Sometimes I think you can be good at too many things or have too many options, and then you can't own in on one option, and it makes you hard. Just an example, a great one, sports analogy here. LeBron versus Michael Jordan. LeBron is a more versatile player than Michael Jordan. But Dave, I actually think that ends up costing LeBron sometimes, because I don't think he's able to fully commit to being really, really great at one aspect on a team, and then they put the other players around him to fill the other voids. I think that's hurt LeBron.
Well, yeah, but Caleb, with Dante Thornton in particular, I didn't think he was a good fit for the slot. I just thought they needed a slot in 2023. So, I mean, he looks like an outside receiver to me the moment I see him. So, I'm not sure. Go ahead.
If they didn't think they needed if they thought they needed a slot in 2023, then Josh Heupel deserves a massive indictment against him for his player analysis. Again, his evaluation of talent. It was very obvious Squirrel White was a perfect fit for that offense in the slot. And then they moved him back into the slot in the middle of the season and realized, oh, yeah, he should have been here all along. And the fact that he missed on that is as much of an indictment as him picking Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker.
I think they fell in love with Dante Thornton's physical ability. And for right or wrong, I think that led to more plays for Dante Thornton. In the end, though, he showed that before he got hurt that he has some pretty good upside. So I think Tennessee's receivers are in really good shape. We haven't even mentioned the tight ends. We'll get to that.
Production matters more than abilities, and it's time to accept that. Josh Heupel is probably a guy who would think that Joey Kent was better than Peerless Price.
I don't know about that. Portions of the program brought to you by Sports Treasures, Knoxville's oldest sports card shop. 35 years in North Knoxville. Follow them, Sports Treasures TN on Facebook, Sports Treasures TN, or just follow us on offthehooksports.com, and I share their stuff all the time. It's absolutely fantastic. You will love Sports Treasures and what they've got going on. A whole lot of fun. And I remind you that they're a big part of what we're doing with Hooker's Corner as we give away monthly prizes. We gave away a John Henderson mini helmet that was autographed by the all-time great, but we've got more than that to give away. As a matter of fact, picking up a prize today. I'll tell you what it is tomorrow. Join Hooker's Corner for just $9.98, and you will be eligible to win those prizes, get increased recruiting coverage, and also you will be able to have more interaction with me and Caleb. Now, you can click on that QR code, and you can join for free, or you can join for $9.98, which will get you eligible to win that monthly prize. Now, if you join for free and you're subscribed to the station, you're a part of Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Rick Terry Jewelry Design will provide a Garmin watch worth over $1,000 to be given away once we hit 8,000 subscribers. You have to be a member of Hooker's Corner, free. You have to be subscribed to this channel, free, and you're good to go. Rick Terry with the Fire Opals. There's nobody like him in town. He is a fine craftsman that treats his customers fairly. So you need to check out those Fire Opals because they are affordable game day jewelry that absolutely look fantastic. Freak athletes. Why James Pierce deserves to be on the list with a bullet, and what other ball makes the list, how they compare to the all-time freak athletes in Tennessee history. We'll get to that. Hang tight with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. I remind you, the show is represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. You need a play to win at Banks & Jones. Give me 2 minutes. I'm going to be right back with you with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
This day in Tennessee sports history. How many days are we till kickoff? It's easy to do now. We can do the math, right? 24, 31 minus 7. We don't have to do all those 30 days has September, April, June, and November and all that stuff. Did you ever get that down? I never got that completely down, Pat. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
I think I've memorized it, which days have 30 and which days have 31. So I think I can do it. I've also memorized presidents in order and reverse order. So
that's insane. Jimmy Himes one time told me he could name every Heisman winner since 56, and
that's pretty good.
He did it. I made him do it. He did it. And then he beat me left-handed in racquetball. Jimmy's a pretty cool guy. But anyway, this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Don Self. Customer service still matters. For over 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers in the greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126, 423-396-2126, or go to donself.net, below donself.net. This day in Tennessee football history, what do you got for me, Caleb?
It's something you covered, funny enough, and you'll find this hilarious. But 24 years ago, yesterday, Tennessee kicked off its first preseason without T. Martin and without Peyton Manning and expectations of rebuilding for the 2000 season. They were going to be outside of the top 10 in the preseason for the first time since 1994. The day after it kicked off, they realized that their prized recruit, 5-star Casey Clausen, wasn't going to be able to go the first 3 or 4 weeks of the year because of a shoulder injury during summer workouts. So they were left scrambling between Joey Matthews and AJ Suggs.
You will never believe when I tell you how he hurt his shoulder.
How did he hurt it?
You think it was throwing the football?
I thought it was a summer workout.
Okay. It wasn't throwing the football. Well, so, you could throw the football in a summer workout. That's kind of a catch-all phrase. What do you think? It wasn't throwing the football. Do you think it was lifting weights?
That's what I thought it was. I thought it was lifting weights.
Casey Clausen has never lifted a weight. Okay. He wanted to see how high he could do a vertical. So they pull out the vertical thing, that has the little flippy things that you knock over. And he wanted to see how high he could jump the vertical. So he did it with his right shoulder, and he hurt his shoulder stretching, reaching.
Oh, my gosh. Really?
And I can't tell you how bad Philip Fulmer didn't want that out at the time.
Oh, my gosh. That is so funny.
What is your quarterback doing a vertical jump in August for?
No, you're right. No, because if you go back, I don't know how I know that. I think I knew that. I only know this, by the way, because of talking to reporters like you and people like that, because it's not out there from 2000. We all just thought, I was a 12-year-old at the time, and we all just thought Fulmer named Joey Matthews the starter and AJ Suggs the backup. We watched them both play in the first 5 weeks of the year, and honestly, I think Fulmer would have rather admitted he let Casey Clausen have the vertical jump, because honestly, the fact that you would have ever thought those two quarterbacks were better than Casey Clausen was ridiculous.
Hey, that may be the last time that Tennessee's had a similar quarterback class. If I've got my years right, Casey Clausen, AJ Suggs, Joey Matthews, Tim Rattay. Do you remember Tim Rattay?
I think that was T. Martin year. I think that was a T. Martin year in 99.
But all four kind of, right now you have 4 highly rated quarterbacks that are all kind of in the mix at the same time. You had something similar then, right?
Joey Matthews, I don't think was that highly rated. That's the worst quarterback play I ever saw.
Well, but in all honesty, Joey Matthews had to go live against Tennessee's #1 defense in spring practice, and I think that destroyed his will to live.
Maybe. What's your excuse for AJ Suggs, who had the worst pocket awareness of any quarterback in history? He got benched at Georgia Tech, I'm pretty sure, once he went there.
He was okay at Georgia Tech. I just don't think he was as talented as Casey Clausen.
What happens if there's not the shoulder injury and Tennessee starting Casey Clausen to start the year? Do you think they beat Florida and LSU and Georgia? Because they started Casey Clausen and won the rest of their games. Or do you think they would lose one of those 3 games?
He still would have been a freshman. You know me. I'm like the freshman red flag guy. So
yeah,
I would have to.
And AJ Suggs lost. That's true, but some of those freshman mistakes, like the AJ Suggs pick 6 against Florida. I'm not sure if Casey does that.
No, I would agree with that. That was, if there was ever a question, I've told you sometimes that it can be 60-40 or 50-50 between one player or another. If it was ever 50-50 between Suggs and Clausen, that throw made it about 90-10 Clausen.
The one to Lito Shepherd?
That was the terrible read. It was a wide side of the
field. He floated
it.
It
was everything you could imagine wrong with that. I mean, that's practically a gift that they gave. So let's get to 4 downs now. We got freaky athletes all over the place, and I'm not referring to Caleb, but he's pretty freaky, and watch out for this.
What do you mean by that? And he doesn't mean in the hookers love freaky people, guys.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Nobody gets freaky like Hooker's Corner.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Squirrel White and James Pierce named freakiest athletes on Bruce Feldman's list that he comes out with each and every year. Pierce, not a surprise at all. He has been compared to Leonard Little by a guy that played with Leonard Little, Fred White. So we're going to go ahead and say he absolutely should be on that list, no question. Squirrel White is just a little ball of muscle, and he can do things that guys his size can't do. So I understand them both being on the list. Before we get to how they compare with the all-time Tennessee freak athletes, Caleb, was there anybody on that list of note or any surprise or any Vol that was left off the list that you might put on there? I feel like this is becoming the Elijah Simmons show, but if he were healthy, Elijah Simmons would be on this list.
Oh, I could see Elijah Simmons if he were healthy being on this list. I believe, because you turn it to the Elijah Simmons show and I turn it to the Mike Matthews show. I think after playing for a year, Mike Matthews will be on this list. I think Mike Matthews is the rarest freaky athlete that Tennessee's ever had at receiver.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see. That's pretty freaky. I can never remember the one guy's name that an NFL scout told me had incredible talent. He's a long, lanky kid, played in the mid-2000s. I've been trying to think of his name for over months that I wanted to compare him to. Maybe I'll come up with at some point, or maybe I'm just...
That's crazy.
All right, let's get to 4 downs now. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, first down, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
All right. James Pierce, Squirrel White. How do they compare to the all-time great freaky athletes? Leonard Little, that's who we just mentioned. James Pierce compares very well to him because Fred White said so, basically. I would trust his eyes more than mine. So that's a heck of a comparison because Leonard Little was one of the greatest athletes that came through Tennessee at their one of the greatest high points in their history.
James Pierce may be better as an athlete. Now here's where it's a little tricky. I think Leonard Little was better at stopping the run. Would you agree on that? Was a better run stopper than James Pierce? Yes.
As a matter of fact, I was going to point out upper body strength. I think would be Little.
But here's the other part. James Pierce is agile enough to drop back in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard Little, you talk about it all the time. When they put him at middle linebacker, wasn't that the problem? He was horrible dropping back in coverage.
Yes, that was a terrible idea.
Yeah. Leonard Little's not getting that pick six that James Pierce got last year against Iowa and outrunning everybody to the house. Now, okay, I take that back. Maybe he is outrunning Iowa players. Okay. But I don't know if he would, but James Pierce would have he'd outrun Georgia players if he got that pick six. See how cleared he was of everybody? And he clocked in at 23 miles an hour at his peak. I don't think Leonard Little's able to, I don't think he can clock in 23 miles an hour speed.
Usain Bolt wouldn't have caught him. I mean, Usain Bolt.
He was?
Yeah. Usain Bolt, I don't know that he would have caught him with the lead he had. Point is, nobody was going to catch him. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay, now we're going to go back in history. So maybe the young ones out there can learn a little bit. Doug Atkins. I'm sorry. No offense to James Pierce or Squirrel White, but a guy that was a freak of nature in his time, Doug Atkins is number one to me in Tennessee history. So I got to give it to Doug Atkins. He jumped over offensive linemen. He was 240, which was big at the time, but was very athletic. Doug Atkins, to me, is the number one overall freak athlete in Tennessee history.
And let's be fair here. All athletics is relative. And what we mean by that is that all athletes today are better than all athletes in the 50s. The question is, how much better than your peers were you? How much more did you stand up? Yeah. So, for instance, you brought up Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt's faster than Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens is greater than Usain Bolt because Jesse Owens dominated the field in the 30s the way nobody has ever dominated track and field in the Olympics since then. So,
Doug Atkins dominated. What you're saying is Doug Atkins dominated SEC offensive linemen when he played like no one else.
like no one else. Relative to his competition, Doug Atkins was the most physical freak maybe in football history. And I mean in the NFL too. And I mean, I've learned a lot about him over the years. You're right. He was when you talk about freakishly athletic players by today's standards in the SEC, Doug Atkins may have been the first to be that.
Did I ever tell you he was my favorite interview I think I ever did?
Oh yeah, you told me about how he was very un-PC.
Yeah. You had to clean up a lot of curse words and maybe some racial things, but when you cleaned it up, it was a good interview. And he was an older guy, so I kind of gave him a pass on the racial issues, which typically I would just ended the interview. It wasn't anything bad.
My understanding is, yeah, it depends on the context and what you mean by it. Like, you know, I have family members that are no longer with me anymore that said some stuff that they never meant anything by it. You know what I mean? So it's like,
we had a guy that you would know that played basketball for Tennessee, and he used the term Afro-Americans one time. He was just older. He didn't mean anything by it, but that's not Afro-Americans. It's not the right phrase.
Here's my question before we move on. Should we be, because John Adams a lot lays into him, since we're saying this, should we be fair to Philip Fulmer as athletic director when he said I consulted with the girls about hiring Kelly Harper? Or should he have known better given his age?
He should have known better. Reggie White. Now, we don't talk about him as a great physical freak athlete, but Caleb and I at the 3:45 a.m. production meeting, we were discussing that. And I'm like, how many guys do I know that are 280 that could take Larry Allen, who, for those that don't know, is the best offensive lineman to ever play football? Larry Allen is. No question. Sorry, Caleb. That's the one I'm going to stick by.
I'm with you. He made Emmitt Smith. There's no Emmitt Smith without Larry Allen.
But at one point, Reggie White, with one arm, took Larry Allen and threw him to the side. A guy that could bench 600 pounds. So that's a freak athlete. We don't talk about Reggie White being a freak athlete, but I would put him right up there, if not higher. And I'd have to put him higher than Pierce because of his size. Squirrel White. At defensive end, you're going to have a bigger impact in the game, so I'd have to go White in this regard.
So which White are you taking?
I go Reggie.
Who's the better White?
I go Reggie.
Okay, all right. I think that I got to go with you on that. And again, this is relative to competition. Reggie White, basically, for those who... When John Henderson was at Tennessee in 2001, we thought it was so freakish that a guy that size could rack up that many sacks, right? It wasn't that common for a defensive tackle to get 12 sacks in a year. And he did it, which was insane. Yes. Guys, Reggie White played defensive tackle in college, and he got 15 sacks in a year. And you don't get that from a defensive tackle. Then he goes to the NFL and becomes a defensive end. I mean, Reggie White was an incredible athlete. Yeah, I have him over James Pierce as an athlete.
Okay. What receiver in Tennessee history, or what receivers would you have ranked over Squirrel White in terms of just freak athlete portions of the program? Brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
She does not charge for her services, registered in over 40 states. So Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com. Caleb, fourth down is this.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right, name a freakier athlete than Squirrel White at receiver. And I want to open that up to the message board too, and I'll dial right in.
I think Carl Pickens is a pretty obvious choice. I think Carl Pickens was a freaky athlete. And honestly, I think Carl Pickens' NFL career wasn't as good as it could have been because I think he was a bit of a diva.
A bit? I mean, that's maybe the nicest thing you've ever said about a person. Yes, he was a diva, and he would have had a Hall of Fame career had he not had the bit of an attitude. He ended up bouncing around. He was tough to get along with. Did I ever tell you about my one Carl Pickens story?
You did not. I need to hear this one.
What year did he play for the Titans? Do you remember?
Oh, 2000. I will never forget that. We had him and then we cut him the next year.
Okay, so they sent me to Nashville to cover a Titans practice because Carl Pickens was there. So I went up there and I'm interviewing Carl Pickens. And so at the time, I'm probably 26, 27. So this is an NFL locker room. This is a big deal, right? And he's the only person in the history of my life that took the microphone from me and commenced to doing the interview himself. He said, "You seem a little nervous," and just took it from me and did it. It was funny, but it was kind of diva jerky-ish too.
It was.
Kind of taking advantage of a young that was in over his head at the time. That was me.
Wait, it's even funnier. I didn't know this. You may know this, Dave. I just looked him up. Did you know that the Bengals had a Carl Pickens clause that they invented?
No. What is a
There was when he signed his contract, they put a loyalty clause in there that basically said he would forfeit all of his signing bonus if he insulted the organization in public. I've never heard of that. That's as bad as the Kyler Murray video game clause.
No, that is that's really bad. And go ahead.
What about? And I've also heard that. So he was Chad Johnson before Chad Johnson, and funny enough, they both played for the Bengals. I've also heard that because of that, he wasn't always as committed to maximizing his potential the way he should have been. Is that fair to say? Which is why his career ended in 2001 and not 2007 with Hall of Fame numbers.
With the right attitude, he has a golden jacket. There's no question.
Yeah, I think so too. And the problem people don't understand is when you're in your prime and you're a rare athlete like he was in the 90s, they'll put up with the bad attitude, right? When you're that talented. But the minute you slip a little bit, you talk about the 50-50, 60-40 thing. If you become a receiver that goes from just a rare talent to like, okay, you could still make it in the NFL, but you have an attitude issue, then it's easy to find another receiver to replace them.
As far as freaky receivers, who else would even be on that list?
So we talked in the morning, and I thought Kelly Washington, but you accurately brought up that he was a grown man's body playing among 18-year-olds at that point, and so it's a little bit different. I thought Dante Stallworth was pretty freakishly athletic on the other side.
Yep, I can roll with that.
Honestly, I will never forget all the talk was about Washington being such a rare talent. I will never forget the second half of that 2001 season thinking, you know what, Dante Stallworth may actually be better than Washington. And I know that was crazy to say at the time.
Yeah, and you're comparing two different people that bodies had changed tremendously. I mean, Kelly Washington had been in a minor league baseball program working out his body, and Dante Stallworth was also younger. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Kelly Washington was 22 when he showed up on campus.
He was.
And so, I mean, yeah, my body changed tremendously from 18 to 22.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In terms of speed, you brought up, would you say like a guy like Alvin Harper was a freaky athlete?
Yes. And, we didn't include some of the guys that ran track, and if we want to say Leonard Scott was a freaky athlete, I know he dropped a lot of balls, but he did get open a lot on the football field, and he was one of the fastest men on the face of the earth.
Yes, but with Leonard Scott, we're going from freaky athlete to just athlete. Like Leonard Scott was just an athlete in terms of how fast. Freaky, I think, like you have a unique blend of size. If
Leonard Scott's 6'4", then yes. Okay, I see.
If Leonard Scott's 6'4", he doesn't have to have hands. He'll make it work in the NFL at that point. Yeah.
This is where Caleb's going to get mad at me because I called him yesterday and he's like, "What's up?" And I said, "I got a perfect topic." And he's like, "Well, I don't know. Let's hash it over." We hash over all the topics at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, but I was so excited about this when I called him the day before. And I said, "You're not going to like it at first, but there's something to it." And I'm telling you, I don't often thumb my nose at tradition, but I might right now. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
You know I'm a traditionalist. I love Neyland Stadium. I love the name. I love all the tradition behind it. However, would Tennessee or should Tennessee ever consider renaming Neyland Stadium if it meant a lot of cash? Now, I said when this came up the first time, no way, because it could be some business who ends up doing something absolutely terrible, and then they represent you and you represent them. And we all saw what happened with Papa John's Stadium at Louisville. You don't want anything like that. But I've got the perfect one, because this person has been around Tennessee her entire life. She loves the Vols, and she is as wholesome as they get. Dolly Parton. The one change that I would make if it meant a lot of NIL money, Dollywood Stadium has a ring to it. They have the money. You would be talking, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about it. I know you are. So the question is, would you rename Neyland Stadium to Dollywood Stadium for $10 million in NIL per year? Yes, by players, already has 20% of the vote. No, tradition is too much. Before you rip me, if you're going to rip me, will you give me that Dollywood is the perfect selection of all the possible sponsors?
I mean, well, let's set this up first, because I don't think we set it up. For those who don't know the story, Florida International is going to name their stadium after Pitbull. Pitbull buys the rights for the football stadium, so it will be Pitbull Stadium now in Florida. Pitbull is, for those who don't know, is a global rapper who does a lot of pop songs. Early Pitbull was great, okay? That dude, Mr. 305 Pitbull, was amazing. Mr. Worldwide, a little too pop for me. But Mr. 305, the one signed to Lil Jon, was...
I don't know as much about pop music, but it seemed like he had kind of moved on. I mean, it didn't seem like he was still relevant.
Early Pitbull had the great combination of like Latino rap mixed with Southern rap, and it was just amazing. Go listen to Mia's first album, his first debut album, one of the greatest Southern rap albums, and it's so underrated. But okay, that's just getting sidetracked. Okay, so I get Florida International doing that makes sense because it's going to help explode their popularity. Tennessee, I debate on the front if they should ever do it because they don't have to get the type of pub FIU gets. FIU's trying to compete with Florida Atlantic because Florida Atlantic had Lane Kiffin, the pit bull of college football. Okay, so Tennessee, I can't debate Dollywood.
Okay,
Joe. But wait.
Yes, go ahead.
But Dave, okay, I'm going to say this, and this is the problem with music in general. Music is relative to an age. I think one of the things that hurt Tennessee recruiting in the 2010s was their commitment to a certain culture made them seem very square to younger recruits coming in.
Oh, the third down for what thing?
Well, that was them trying, and it was blatantly pathetic. But yes. like you got to introduce some young flair. Okay, like Rocky Top. I'm sorry, when you play the country sound of Rocky Top, I think a lot of athletes visiting are going to be like, this is not my vibe. I do think that.
But every school has that. Every school has some hokiness to an 18-year-old.
I'm not saying drop the hokiness. I'm saying what you need to do is you got to add some flair to it. The only thing with Dollywood is it is going to come across a little hokey. And you got, like, Tennessee's got a lot of hokiness.
You say hokey, I say wholesome.
But it's not, you got to think of something a little more. First of all, Pitbull itself is outdated. Like, I remember people were talking about Deion Sanders in Colorado, like, oh, he's so cool, he's bringing in Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne's old. Lil Wayne is past his prime. He's so 2009, bro. Okay? So, like, and I'm saying, like, you got to, if you're going to do this, you have to understand that what you're doing, if you're doing it new, now, if they had done it Dollywood like in the 1970s and just kept it, you got me. Or the 1980s, you got me. But doing it now in a new form almost comes across as just old.
Wait, Dolly Parton wasn't considered hip and cool in the 80s by 17-year-old prospects. Maybe she was because of two big reasons, but
two really, really big reasons
I don't
that
know
are bigger now.
I mean, I don't know that she hurts or helps the draw to Dollywood Stadium just because of now. Now, if you said because she's older, she's not going to be around much longer, then I could roll with you on that. But
I don't know. Dolly was
$10 million. She would pay. I guarantee you, they pay $10 million a year for naming rights.
Dolly came out at a time when country music, while square, was kind of hip at the same time because it was rebellious, it was outlaw, and so it connected. You know, it's a little bit different now. I mean, you would be better off like naming it after Morgan Wallen or somebody like that at this point. And
you're probably right, but I hate that. Let me ask you this: Food City or Dollywood?
Dollywood. That's a way better name. Yeah, Food City is like, but like I'm anti-corporate in general, so you know, Food City is like I've never liked naming stadiums after corporations. I hated it when they started doing bowl games that way. I just want them named after. I think that has absolutely contributed to the destruction of college football.
Can I offer you this too? Because I know way too. The one thing you may not know about me, I'm also a big amusement park guy. So you mentioned I was a car guy, but I love roller coasters. This is something you may not know. They set in place 10 years ago at Dollywood a goal to be a destination amusement park. What that is defined as, more than 50% of your customers come from outside a 250-mile radius. I know way too much about this. They just crossed that threshold. So if you're in some sort of partnership with Dolly and Dollywood, you're going to grow your brand by God that people actually fly from China to go to Dollywood. I know that is bizarre. Not China, Japan, wherever. They fly across the world to go to Dollywood. So you're going to grow your brand because you're going to have Tennessee stuff everywhere. This is a partnership.
That is true. That is true. And Dollywood, look, no one holds Dolly Parton in higher regard than I do. I mean, Dolly Parton has done more to help. I'm sorry?
Her bra does.
Fair enough. In an age where we have gut funding for public education and literacy rates are collapsing, no one has done more to combat that than Dolly Parton, where she has her giant. I mean, Dolly Parton goes out of her way to make sure low-income kids still have literacy. The literacy rate doesn't collapse among low-income kids in this country. That Dolly Parton Books program, I don't know if you know about it, Dave, but like Dolly Parton is a huge reason that the illiteracy rate isn't even worse among young kids today. And so no one holds Dolly in higher regard than me in that way. So you're right. From a business, I may be coming around because from a business perspective, Dollywood would take it global. I mean, guys, but let's just be honest. There's somebody else who lives in Tennessee and nobody knew what football was as a sport before she started dating Travis Kelce. I mean, she made football famous.
Well, you're not going to name it Swift Stadium.
Taylor Swift made football famous, guys. It was a niche sport, and then Taylor Swift started dating Travis Kelce, and everybody started watching it.
I mean, maybe she could start dating some teenage Tennessee football players.
Possibly. Okay, wait. Here's a good one. Dave, this is horrible. But the year that the Lane Kiffin Bruce Pearl year where New Keith Richardson got kicked off and Tyler Smith got dismissed from the team with the issues.
Jansen Jackson was plotting his murder. Go ahead.
There's a rapper from Memphis now named Key Glock. Tennessee should have used him as their endorsement. He'd have been great. Key Glock Stadium, guys, right down the road.
So if you didn't hear the beginning of the program, Caleb got me in all kinds of trouble when I did a Memphis radio station because they thought that I wrote the 16 head coaches ranked that is on offthehooksports.com. And you had Steve Sarkisian where? 9th?
I believe I had him 8th.
8th. I think you may have had him 9th. I took the heat for that. We'll go through the list as I get my revenge next on Caleb Calhoun. This is Off the Hook Sports. So you made me look stupid on Memphis radio. 2 minutes Off the Hook Sports.
Cab 4x4 STX 45,985. 24 Ford Escape 30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT 32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
I don't think many people on the message board are a fan of Taylor Swift Stadium. I think we can pretty much put that one to bed.
How about together, Taylor Swift Key Glock Stadium, Dolly Parton Key Glock Stadium, Dolly Parton Key Glock Stadium. Have Dolly Parton and Key Glock stand next to each other at the stadium. You got the youth movement, you got the older generation. Everybody's happy. Hey, and for those who don't like hip hop, Key Glock. I mean, that's Tennessee's very pro Second Amendment. That's very gun rights, isn't it? Key Glock.
Yeah, I guess so. I
You
guess
can say it's a Second Amendment thing.
Yeah, I don't think the Taylor Swift thing's going to happen. I don't think the Neyland thing is going to happen, and I'm glad because I do like tradition. But I'll say this:
Taylor Swift made Tennessee football famous, guys. Like nobody knew what Tennessee football was before Taylor Swift moved to Tennessee and then became a star and started dating Travis Kelce.
Come on. No, that's not true. All right, let's get to ranking the 16 head coaches. All right, let's start with Steve Sarkisian. So I'm doing WHBQ radio in Memphis this morning. They asked me about where Sarkisian is ranked, and they said that was a little low. So I'm going to start a little out of order, and then we'll go down the entire list. Where do you have Sarkisian?
I have Steve Sarkisian at number 9. Now,
That's crazy.
I will say this up front. A lot of this is, I think, like the SEC, it's so different from just about like 7 years ago, where I actually think the SEC's collection of head coaches is very good 1 through 11. And it would have been 1 through, and honestly, this is with Nick Saban retiring. I think the SEC coaching is as good as it's ever been right now with, well, it was last year maybe. With
No, I hadn't thought about that, but I would agree with that. With Saban last year, I think you had 2 what could be legendary coaches. You have a bunch of up and coming coaches. You have what Mark Stoops is doing at Kentucky. Except for Shane Beamer and Billy Napier, I think pretty good shape last year as far as making that argument the best group of SEC coaches ever.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember there was a period where like you had Butch Jones and Ed Orgeron and Chad Morris and Brett Palima and I mean, I'm just like, oh yeah, this was mid 2010s. It was man, Butch Jones and Ed Orgeron were coaching in the league together, Dave.
No, that doesn't make any sense. I remember saying to myself at SEC Media Days, I'll tell you one thing, LSU's, they're loaded. but I can't see Ed Orgeron lifting a national championship trophy. I was wrong. Number 16, let's go to the list as we rank the coaches in the SEC. Head coaches, Shane Beamer, number 16.
That's crazy.
The only reason I'm saying you're crazy is because I think Billy Napier is the worst coach in the SEC, but he'll be 15. Why did you choose Beamer over Napier to be the worst?
Because part of this is your overall resume, and I'm not going to take away what Billy Napier did at Louisiana before he went to Florida. He won 4 straight division titles, 2 Sun Belt titles at that level. Now, you can come back at me and say, and I say this all the time, when you're at a lower level school in Louisiana, it is so easy to be very good because you need gas money and you'll go find some guys at a high school down the road that'll go play for you. And
this is going to be for me.
You suck, you jackass.
You're right. I mean, Napier is going to find another job as a head coach somewhere at a smaller school. Beamer is on his path to career assistant, maybe coordinator.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
Sam Pittman at number 14.
That's crazy.
I like Sam Pittman.
So wait, let me just address Beamer real quick.
Okay.
Since he is 18-20 at South Carolina. He's 20-18, excuse me. He should be 18-20. If not for Connor Stallions, he would be 18-20. That's why I have him low. So Sam Pittman at number 14. Why are you so in love with Sam Pittman?
I'm not in love with Sam Pittman. I guess I just respect him. I respect the game that he was raised in, which is, maybe it's just that I think he's very likable. But I think that's about the best Arkansas can do. So I know we're not talking about coaches on the hot seat, but he is on the hot seat. But I don't know that Arkansas can go out and hire a better coach than Sam Pittman. I just think they have those limitations.
I don't think they have that limitations. You can't be as limited as Sam Pittman. I'm sorry. Sorry. I don't mean to go there, but like Sam, they have Walmart money, so that's not true. But 2, you can't be as limited as Sam Pittman. You can do better than him.
Okay, fair enough. I think that program has a lot of problems. I don't know why they're still playing in Little Rock, to be honest with you. Clark Lee.
Hey now.
I'm fine with him at 13. No arguments there. Now it starts to get really interesting.
Where people get lazy is people are like, oh, Clark Lee should be at 16. He's been the worst. Yeah, because he's been at Vanderbilt.
Clark Lee could do the same thing, especially with Connor Stallions, that Shane Beamer has done at South Carolina.
Yes, exactly. Like it's you have to grade these on a curve, and Clark Lee's on a massive curve.
Okay, now the next 2 are going to create some debate. Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and then you have Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. So most people, I think, would have Venables above Lebby and even higher on this list after what he did last year. But you and I'm not going to argue with you because I think last year was a fluke. I think their schedule is incredibly difficult. Again, not a hot seat conversation, but I do not believe he is an elite coach. I might not have him as low as 12, but not to the point that I'm going to play the sounder. Jeff Lebby, I know you really like at Mississippi State. Thoughts on those 2?
I think Jeff Lebby is the best hire that anybody made in college football this offseason. I'm not even kidding you guys. Jeff Lebby is a guy. I'm having a hard time wondering why I didn't put him higher on this list because it's only because of lack of qualifications. Jeff Lebby conceived the offenses for Josh Heupel and Lane Kiffin. They are products of offenses they conceived working with Jeff Lebby.
Hugh Freeze at 10. As a pure X's and O's coach, he's better than 10. However, we have to factor in what he's done as far as breaking NCAA rules at Ole Miss. A lot of those were under his watch. All of those were under his watch and maybe even his purveyance. So are you counting the fact that he's had NCAA issues of why you have him at 10, or you just think as the X's and O's he's 10?
I think it's the cheating, but it's also, and it's the other factor that's underrated, Dave, is that he made some mistakes last year that I didn't think were possible for a coach that I thought was of his caliber. I'm going to be honest. A part of the reason I knocked him so far down was the defensive call against Alabama in the Iron Bowl. That's the worst defensive call I've ever seen in my life. And how could a coach be
remind
so
people.
It was 4th and goal from the 30. If they get a stop, they win the game. Hugh Freeze rushed 2. By the way, that's stupid on its own because if you're going to rush 2, just don't rush anybody, right? Just have those extra guys back in the secondary. Rushing 2 does you no good. He drops another guy in spy. Do you think Jalen Hurts or Jalen Milroe is going to run 30 yards for a touchdown on 4th and goal from the 30?
I don't know. Joe Milton tried it.
Well, yes, that's true, and it didn't work.
Okay.
Do you think he's going to successfully do it? It's the worst call in history.
No, it's pretty bad. We talked about Steve Sarkisian being at 9, Eli Drinkwitz at 8. I think most people would have him higher, maybe above Brian Kelly at 7, but
Hey now.
I'm with you. I think that Brian Kelly is a better coach. We're about to get to Heupel and where he ranks, but you've got Eli at number 8, Kelly at 7. Eli had a better year than Kelly last year. Why?
Okay, so I dropped Brian Kelly significantly. People would ask why. The real question is, why is Brian Kelly so close to Eli Drinkwitz? We're talking about a guy who has coached for 30 years, has 200 career wins, is pushing 300 actually, and played for a national title at Notre Dame. And the answer is that Brian Kelly, like Hugh Freeze, made a lot of on-field coaching mistakes that dropped him significantly on my list last year. I'm sorry. It's kind of an indictment against him that he hasn't even come close to playing for a national title in 2 years at LSU, given the talent down there. And I'm going to say that Brian Kelly moving Harold Perkins over to middle linebacker has been such a stupid decision, and he wasted a Heisman quarterback last year.
Okay. I agree with that. I'm not as high on Kelly as I was, and I wonder now how he's going to stack up against SEC coaches like Josh Heupel.
As for Eli Drinkwitz, before we get to Heupel, Eli Drinkwitz went 11-2, but had really just one quality win last year. Took advantage of a very weak schedule, and I still can't overlook him having a losing record his first 3 years at Missouri. I'm not going to undo that for just 1 year.
Are you counting Tennessee as a quality win?
Yes.
Okay. You have Josh Heupel at number 6.
Josh Heupel also fell on my list.
Okay. Now, what I would like to do is I want to come back to Heupel, okay? Because I want to go through who you think the top 4 are and then how Heupel compares. Okay, so you've got Mike Elko at A&M.
Wait, I forgot Mark Stoops at number 5.
Oh, sorry, I did forget Mark Stoops. I scrolled too quickly. Mark Stoops at Kentucky, who has done an incredibly respectful job at Kentucky. Whether or not they can ever be title contenders, I don't know. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, you and I both like him a lot. Kalen DeBoer, that's the guy they targeted, went out and got. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss at number 2. Kirby Smart at number 1. There's really no argument for Kirby. However, based off what I've seen, and there's not as much longevity, but if you're asking me that I have to hire one of these coaches out of the top 6, Heupel, Stoops, Elko, DeBoer, Kiffin, Smart, well, you have to say Smart. You would probably have to say DeBoer since he got to the college football national championship game last year. Outside of that, I'm taking Josh Heupel. So does that make him number 3 on my list?
That does, and I think you're crazy. And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
I'm not saying Josh Heupel can't be that way, but Josh Heupel has shown some really, really bad red flags that I haven't seen from these other coaches. One, player evaluation. You just told me went after Dante Thornton because he fell in love and thought he could immediately be better than Squirrel White when every sign showed Squirrel White was an elite slot receiver, and that's not who you needed to go after. That's a big miss. Thinking Joe Milton was better than Hendon Hooker is one of the worst evaluations I've ever seen a head coach make in the history of football. And I don't know how anybody could ever have seen those two and thought that Joe Milton was better. I don't believe him about the practice player stuff, and I'll never believe him about that. I think he misevaluated, and I think it's because Joe Milton was his guy. I haven't seen that from these other coaches. And then there were some play calling issues last year, Dave, that kind of actually rubbed me the wrong way that made me drop him a little more.
I will be honest with you. I want to hear about them, but if they're offensive play calls, I almost totally just erase them from my memory because he was so limited at the quarterback position. But go ahead. Okay. I want to hear the calls.
Well, some of them don't have. No, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't mind. I've always told you guys I don't mind when he goes for it on 4th and 1. I do mind when he goes for it on 4th and 1 from the shotgun. He was getting under center in 2022 with Princeton Fan. He could have done that last year, and he didn't do it. That bothers me. The other thing that bothers me is that he doesn't make in-game adjustments at all. I mean, he is John Chavis level with in-game adjustments at this point, and that's bad.
I think he expects his system to work. I think he expects his system to eventually, Philip Fulmer used to say, running the football, pound the rock. I think that Josh Heupel has a similar type of approach in that if he runs the football, his offense should work. So the fact that he sticks with his plan, yes, I'm all for in-game adjustments, but what in-game adjustments are you supposed to do when you're limited at quarterback? I mean, it's not as if anybody ever asked Nebraska to break out of the triple option and do something else. If they didn't have Tommy Frazier or Eric Crouch, then they're not going to be nearly as good. Caleb, I just don't know what adjustments you could have made with limitations at quarterback.
You're talking about there's got to be something, because they're saying themselves that Missouri threw a totally different defense at them, and that's why they lost that game. Well, if that's the case, then they were obviously preparing for something specific to that defense. And you couldn't have noticed when they threw something totally different in the middle of the game. I mean, I got to knock that against them. And then here's the other thing you have to knock against them. With the exception of Kentucky and LSU, which, again, LSU on the road does not count when they're at 11 because LSU fans don't get up for 11 a.m. games. They don't have a quality road win under him. They're horrible on the road.
Well, it still counts. I mean, they won on the road, but I agree with you that was a challenge for LSU. Let me ask you this. In 5 years, you've got Heupel 6. Let's say all these coaches keep their jobs, which they won't because they'll have other opportunities or they'll get fired. Where do you think he'll rank in 5 years?
I think he could go as high as number 2. Let me go through the list. Maybe number 3. Mark Stoops, you said. I think Mark Stoops is stuck at 5. I don't think he's going to have the chance to prove himself to be any better than that because he's at Kentucky and he's not looking to do anything else. But he's maximized. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, again, Ivy League hire at a school loaded with talent. I think what he could do is off the charts. But I think Josh Heupel could do better because of the NIL. It depends on what happens over the next couple of years. Kalen DeBoer at Alabama it is surprising me. It has the chance to be good. And he already is more accomplished than Heupel, but Heupel could surpass him. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, I think Heupel could surpass him too. I know you think I'm crazy for Lane Kiffin at number 2, David. Look,
I've covered both of them. I think Josh Heupel's a better coach than Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, but Lane Kiffin is like low key, like really brilliant. Like he's like that socially awkward but really smart kid.
Right. I would take Josh Heupel as a better overall coach because now we're seeing recruiting from him. But if they had to sit down and go X's and O's, I might go Lane. That would be
right.
That would be a tough call between the two. You're talking about 2 heavyweight championships. You're talking about champions. You're talking about Foreman and Ali in terms of offensive football. The SEC. Well, so you've got in 5 years you could see Heupel at 2, relatively easily.
I mean, I'll say this: if Heupel, I'm not just going to dismiss him potentially passing Kirby Smart. If Heupel wins 2 titles at Tennessee, he would surpass Kirby Smart at Georgia because Tennessee's a harder place to win 2 titles at.
Fair enough. All right. As always, we are brought to you by our fine sponsors. Support our sponsors. They're right here. In 2 minutes, the SEC has just reports. It appears as if there's going to be a big change in the SEC. We're going to get to that in 2 minutes off Thug Sports.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your pair. 23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Welcome back, as it's time for some semi-breaking news that is pretty intriguing, and I don't think Josh Heupel's going to like it.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
Show represented by Banks & Jones. Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. Banks & Jones ready to go to trial for you. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney. And I remind you, Apex Apparel Group Design will give you 15% off your first order for your company or your spirit wear. They design, brand, and market. They do all that. Just call Tyler right below at 865-919-3001, 865-919-3001, Apex Apparel Group Design. Injury reports in college football, that apparently is going to happen, at least a report that we have from CBS. What can you tell us about that? This is semi-breaking news here.
Yes, CBS is reporting that the SEC is moving towards adopting mandatory injury reports in time for the 2024 season. Has not been officially approved, but multiple sources indicated the deals. I'm sorry, guys, I didn't realize my mic was so far away. But multiple sources have indicated that that they are basically kind of adopting an NFL model, and the deals are close to being finalized and will be in place at the start of 2024. This is going to come within 2 weeks. They are following the Big Ten's lead, which instituted a game day availability report during the 2023 season. This is to stop people like Josh Heupel and others employing gamesmanship. Nick Saban openly said last year, we don't want to put ourselves at a disadvantage. He said he respects other people, what the media does. What Nick Saban low-key was saying was, I can't give you guys this stuff if other people aren't going to give you guys this stuff. So
who would you lost me? Who would the other people? What do you mean by the other people?
He's saying he can't be willing to be honest about injuries if other coaches aren't going to be honest about injuries, because then that puts his team at a disadvantage relative to other coaches. That's what Nick Saban said. So that's why I think teams do this.
The Hemp House, a premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. This is going to cause a rub between some athletic directors and coaches, because the reason this is coming about is pretty simple. It's gambling. And ultimately, gambling is driving this. Has anybody noticed that ESPN feels more like a gambling network than it does a sports network? I
think they're relying on gambling to save themselves.
They are. They completely are. And the gambling companies, whether that turns into ESPN or not, are actually going to be the content providers very soon. It's going to be, you're going to watch BetUS or whatever channel you watch. So that's going to happen. And the gamblers don't want to be misinformed. Now, you singled out Josh Heupel, and he did this last year with Coop. He did it with Cooper Mays. They knew that Cooper Mays would at best be ready for the Florida game early in the year. I'm talking about midway through preseason camp. That was best case scenario. Then they knew when the season started he probably would not play against Florida. Now, My question to you, if you're Josh Heupel and the NCAA or SEC is saying you have to give us an injury report that consists of questionable, probable, out, how do you handle the Cooper Mays situation before Florida? Because I don't think I don't think Florida has any right to know that Cooper Mays may not play. So how do you handle it if you're Heupel?
Well, what do you do if the coach is at odds with the player or anything like that on this? Josh Heupel said they anticipate Cooper to go the week of the Florida game. I have no proof on this. I have no evidence on this, and I'm just speaking from spitballing. I always believe, and this is another knock on Josh Heupel from my previous SEC coaching list, his mishandling of injuries. I believe he was trying to force Cooper out there and pressure him to go out there by making that statement, and thought that by pressuring him, he could get out there.
There are some people that believe that to be the case. I have not been told definitively on that or not, but I can tell you that it certainly read that way. Whether he meant to do that or not, or whether he was sending Florida a message that we're going to be pretty close to 100% get ready, I don't know. I mean, I think you say Cooper's going to play either way. If that's your stance, if you think he might even possibly play, you say he's going to play and just let the chips fall where they may. My question is, though, would you list him as questionable, probable, out? I mean, this is going to be, Josh Heupel does not like to. He's as secretive as there is a coach in the SEC. He does not like to give away injury information. I don't think he's going to like this at all.
But Dave, my question is he secretive because other coaches are secretive? It's like in baseball. You can be against the designated hitter rule, but you're going to use it if somebody else is using it. You have to, right? You can't put yourself at a disadvantage.
Okay, so is he going to lie? Is he just flat out going to lie? And will there be punitive reactions for that? I mean, if you say a guy is doubtful and he goes out there and plays the whole game, are you going to get a financial penalty from the SEC or somebody?
I mean, how does the NFL enforce it?
You got me. I know that. Here's the way I think Josh Heupel will approach it. I think everybody will be questionable, like Bill Belichick. I think if you even have a hangnail, you will be questionable. I don't think anybody's going to be. There may be a few probable guys, but everybody's going to be questionable. If you go back and look, that is exactly what Bill Belichick did. Tom Brady was questionable like every game for 8 years. I mean, he was going to play, Caleb. So
that is true. That is true.
I think that's how Josh Heupel will handle it.
I could see that.
I like that because that's not lying. Questionable, yeah, he could trip off the bus and then he doesn't play. So I'm okay with it because that's not lying, because I don't like lying.
But I don't like what Josh Heupel does either as a media member. And the reason the Big Ten did this, first, let's call it what it is. We have to show a little bit of appreciation for the fact that, Dave, you and I are journalists. The Big Ten schools, many of them are journalism-centric schools, right? I mean, heavily so. I feel like there's a lot more respect for the work that reporters do in the Big Ten than there is in the SEC. A lot of times, I mean, we know this straight up out and out. There are some SEC programs where newspapers required you to be the mouthpiece for the program more than actually cover them. Not Knoxville, but it's
agreed. Are you saying that Tennessee's media will plong with the if he calls everybody questionable? Are they going to? Will they play along? Will they say yes, he's questionable, or will they report, no, I saw him on crutches on Thursday, so he's not going to play?
I think many in Knoxville questioned the whole Cooper Mays dichotomy against Florida last year. Now, I don't know how much to a degree. I have a feeling, Dave, if you were still the beat reporter for Tennessee, you would have been questioning that a lot more.
Maybe a little bit.
And maybe have gotten yourself suspended.
Maybe not suspended. That was a long time ago. I'm a different day.
Yeah, but
I will still say I got Employee of the Month that month.
There you go. Like, how many guys on the message board? How many people do you guys know that cover any, not Tennessee, that cover any team that are as hard on that decision as we are last year? We're very suspicious of it. The whole Heupel saying Cooper Mays needs to play, and then Cooper Mays doesn't play. And I felt that I've said from the start, I feel like Josh Heupel mishandled that injury dating back to spring, and he doesn't want to admit it. And
right. Well,
I think,
but everybody makes mistakes. They should have had the surgery earlier in the season. But, I mean, not the season, the off season.
Put it this way, Knoxville, you wouldn't have gotten the Butch Jones Shy Tuttle rant in many other places in the SEC because nobody would have actually had the guts to ask the question.
Agreed. Portions of the program, including the stat of the day, brought to you by Ray Varner Ford.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
All right, Caleb, give me the stat of the day. What do we got?
All right, let's have a little fun. Let's go back in time, Uncle Rico style. And we're going to say way back in 1933, a man named Dick Dorsey for Tennessee became the first player for Tennessee to have over 80 yards rushing on one play. Ran for 87 yards against Virginia Tech in 1933. It's August the 7th, 8-7. Dick Dorsey ran for 87 yards. Nobody surpassed that until I would say it would be, I think, Kelsey Finch running for 99 yards, the longest play in Tennessee history in 1977.
I thought you were going to say dorsal at first, like the dorsal fin on a dolphin. And I thought to myself, it's weird that his first name is what a dorsal fin would be on the underside of a dolphin. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. We are with you weekdays at 10 a.m. Plenty to come up on the site, offthehooksports.com, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.